Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Space Snacks. And today, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Antonio Paris, who is the Chief Scientist at Planetary Sciences Incorporated. He's also an amazing explorer and author. Thank you for coming on the show today, Antonio.
Thanks for the invite. Finally, we've been struggling back and forth to get on the show. I finally
I
was able
know.
to.
Technology. Hopefully, I won't lose you as we're chatting here because I have so much that I want to talk to you about. Um,
Sure.
First of all, I want to get a little bit into your background. Who are you and what do you do? Can you share that with the audience?
Well, initially, I was an astronomer, right? Astronomy is a big field, and I was studying uh, astrophysics for a year or two, and I don't like to say it's boring, but I didn't find the need to study black holes and neutron stars. Um, it was really nothing significant when it comes from how does humans, right, from a human perspective, how does that actually move us forward? Yeah, they're
Mhm.
important topics, right? But I found that um, things that are closer to Earth, like the Moon, Mars, etc., even some comets and asteroids, have immediate implications to Earth. Not only as human beings, but as we move forward into space exploration. So I'm not saying black holes are not important. They are, but they really have no importance to how do humans move forward to Mars? How do you move to going back to the lunar surface? So I kind of put that to the side and and then right about that time, I was invited by NASA to go out to ASU for their curiosity course, which was a couple of weeks of geology. And I was like, hey, this is what I really want to do. I'm actually outside, not in some observatory all night. Um, the things I'm working on have some direct implications to Earth, whether it's climate change or moving forward into perhaps living on Mars or on the moon here in the near future. And I felt there was more interest in that. So I know this because if I would post something on neutron stars, most people would be like, okay, whatever, right? But if I post something on lava tubes and how we can leverage lava tubes to live on Mars, or lava tubes on the lunar surface, or how do we protect ourselves from radiation, I it seemed like the responses to those researchers were better.
Mhm.
And so I was like, okay, this is it for me, and I've been doing that for about 7 years now.
Well, you mentioned Arizona State University, which is I'm an alumnus of. I got my master's and PhD. I got my master's in geology from there. And funny enough, I always kind of was more teaching and geologic disasters. Even though my peers were going into planetary science, I was a little late to realize how awesome planetary science is and all of that stuff. So being an explorer, where would you want to go? Would you want to go to the moon, the Mars, the International Space Station? Do you have a preference?
No, not the space station. It would be kind of like sitting in a camper, for a year, right? And not be able to do much. Yeah, it would be cool if yeah, if I was invited, I would obviously go. Um, the lunar surface is basically the same. It's basically Death Valley, right, without a sun. Um, I prefer the moon, and if we can go further, something like Titan or Enceladus or even
Ah.
Europa beneath the ice, that would be cool. So that's where planetary science comes in, right? How do we survive in these extreme environments? How do we leverage these resources that are there, right, to make things more comfortable for us? So I look at these areas like gas stops, right? Gas, like, you're on a trip to Disney, you're gonna have to stop a few times, right? So the moon is going to be a gas station.
Mhm.
Mars is eventually going to be a gas station. Even Io and Europa eventually in a couple hundred years will be a gas station to maybe even the Kuiper Belt where there's other cool stuff to explore.
Oh, that sounds so good. I love the way you use that as an analogy. So one of the things that I want to talk to you about is I love your posts. I'm going to bring up an image, and a lot of times you'll post these cool places that you go and explore on Earth. Yeah, I call it a geo exploring. And so Tell me a little bit about that and what drives you to kind of go to these places. And so I'm going to pop up this image and then I'm going to disappear here.
Okay, cool. I see it. Very nice.
So, what are the things that when I think of, I love following you. I follow you on Twitter, I follow you on Facebook because you are always going on some amazing adventure. I love your motto of just keep exploring. And so,
So
have you always,
those images are interesting because they go back to the discussion a few minutes ago where I cannot visit a neutron star, right? I would be torn apart. I can't visit a black hole, um, or dark matter, those cool things that other people study. But if I wanted to visit Mars or Titan, yes, atmospheric anomalies, we can put that to the side. But um, some of the Earth has a lot of analog sites, right? Like in Utah, the Four Corner states in particular. Iceland is another one, or even under the water. Uh, those are the ones that attract me. So if I wanted to study uh, somewhere I can physically be, right, and use that as an analog site, then that's why I enjoy planetary science. So I want to go to ice. If I want to study lava tubes, then we have several lava tubes here on Earth, including Arizona, New Mexico, even Iceland. Some of the one I think the one in the mountain you see right there. So my buddy and I, he's a medical doctor. We're actually working on a topic now called extreme environments. How do humans survive in these extreme environments? Titan is similar to a high altitude environment. Um, we don't need pressure suits on Titan, right? But it's going to be very cold. We need some type of breathing device. So the best case is kind of like being almost on Mount Everest, right? Very high altitude, same pressure, but very cold. But we don't need pressure suits, and human can survive in that environment relatively easier, probably than Mars and the lunar surface, where there's almost no atmosphere. So I always annually I look at three things I want to study at. That's about the most I can do as a nonprofit, whether it's for monetary reasons or just for time. So I look at three topics that are relatively easy to travel to, where I can spend a week or two. And I always invite somebody, Lawrence,
yep,
um, and and we focus on that. So we look at a question, which is sometimes an hypothesis, and the data's there. NASA doesn't hide anything, right? The PDS system, JMARS, is out in the open. You just download those plugins and you can do some research. There's nothing secret about it. You just gotta know how to play with the data, and that's it. We do research, we publish it. We just did one on rivers in the Moenkopi that look very similar to
right,
ancient rivers on Mars. So, and I don't know if you noticed this, most of my research I always leave it open for others. I always leave little breadcrumbs for other scientists to take over.
hmm,
So I'm done with lava tubes. Now someone can look at maybe astrobiology in lava tubes, right? So I left that little breadcrumb in there because I don't do astrobiology. River for morphology, I kind of left some breadcrumbs in there for people that study rivers, because if I visit a dry riverbank in Texas, for example, right, and I dig 100 feet below that riverbank, I'm probably gonna find water, right? So let's follow the breadcrumbs. We have tons of ancient rivers on Mars. Um, if I was a prospector and if I can bring my equipment to Mars, I would probably look for water in those ancient morphologies rather than on some impact crater or something like that, right? So that's the kind of, and same thing I did with the wow signal. I said this could be it, let it out, and people, and then that exploded. A million people said it was wrong. A million people said it was right. I don't get into that debate. I have a few more years to wait for that comet to come back around. Um, so that's it. So now I'm kind of going to put Mars to the side just for a couple of months, and I'm going to look at my buddy and I. We've been dying to finish this project on Enceladus, Titan. It's called New Worlds, and how can we physically? It's not really planetary science, but how do we survive there psychologically, mentally, physically?
yeah,
What are the gases and the environments excuse me, the gases in that environment that we can exploit for our benefit. There might be a little bit of planetary science in there. If we find a cool cave, ice cave under the ice in Europa, would be kind of nice. So that's it. That's
So is that your upcoming trip? Is that have to do with the epic across the United States? What you just described?
yes
Is
and
that?
no. Yes and no. So last year I was flying everywhere, right? And I logged a lot of miles, and it got very expensive. This year, and it has to do a lot with COVID-19.
Mhm.
I scaled back. Other than that one trip to, because we had to finish this paper, we had a deadline. Other than that one trip to Arizona, I'm going to fly less, and I'm going to do one long trip. Right? It's gonna be both my epic trip and my research trip. So along that route, for example, Yellowstone, I will be doing some research on extremophiles. Glacier Park, I'll be doing some research there. That is concerning Europa. Mount Rainier will be training for that extreme environments, and then the last one's Utah, which is there's an impact. Well, there's a proposed impact crater out there in the Canyonlands. I think it's a rampart crater. I posted a video a few months ago about what are ramparts. So that was kind of a hint of why I'm studying ramparts, because I think the one in Utah, Upheaval, is a rampart crater. There's been debate by NASA and geologists years ago. They said it was a salt mine. Was it a salt dome? Excuse me. NASA came in and said it was an impact crater because they found tektites. But about 2 years ago, some geologists debunked that and said they weren't tektites. So there's been no research since then. Uh,
Wow.
but it looks like to me like a rampart crater. I have to wait. I'm hoping by the time I get around there, they'll start accepting research permits for
Mhm.
Utah, or they'll. If I don't know, I'm hopeful that they'll accept research permits. Also,
Well, I'm I'm hopeful that I can meet up with you somewhere along the way because I know when you came to Arizona, you invited me up to Flagstaff on your last research project, but it didn't work out. Hopefully, one of
oh
these
my God,
times.
that trip that was supposed to be a 3 day trip,
Yeah.
and that was just based on my planning. Because I was like, oh, this road looks tough. I don't want to get a flat like the last time.
Hmm.
And we ended up doing all 10 images in like 5 hours.
Right.
Because I the that's this is why you cannot trust Google imagery, right? Everybody's like, oh yeah, look at this, I found this in Google, right? So we physically went there, and there was a road that went along the entire Navajo to all those sites that was freshly built, and
Oh,
it's not on Google Maps,
had I
and it's
known, I would have been there for that one day.
yeah. And I said, you know what? I said this road it's gonna be like 10 miles per hour all through all this nasty terrain. And when I got there, I was like, dude, we could do this in one day. And I went back to the Hilton Friday night because I was like, I'm not staying out here. Plus COVID-19, it was weird going to gas stations, and so I was like, let's get these 10 shots with the drone, and we got some really nice shots, and we went back. We slept one night only out in Flagstaff over by SP Crater,
Oh
uh,
yeah. Hmm.
and we came back, and it worked out too because the next day the winds were strong, like 40 miles per hour,
Oh,
and the
the
drone would
drone.
have not.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, it worked out perfect, and we took off. So
So talk to me now about food. When you're thinking about, first of all, let's go back to exploration. If you were on the moon or Mars, what would you want to eat? If you could eat anything, what would it be?
well, there's a difference what I want to eat and what I should eat, right?
Well, that's true.
Diet,
What would you
diet.
want
You
to eat?
probably know more this than me, but diet. I did years ago. I did a paper on psychology and physiology going to Mars. And I just listed the stuff that NASA recommended for dietary uh, human consumption. If I could eat whatever I want on
Mhm.
Mars, um, I enjoy traditional all American breakfast, a good bacon, some
Ah.
scrambled eggs, and hash
Mhm.
browns. I've had the MRE version of that. It is not bacon and eggs and hash browns. I don't know who comes up with this stuff, but it's definitely not the same. So I kind of like that, and a good, I don't know, home cooking from mom. No one
Oh,
ever beats that.
Oh, what's one of your mom's your favorite dish when you think of your mom? What's one of the favorite dishes that she cooks?
Oh, so just Sunday she made something called bacalao. It's
What
it's
is
like
that?
it's a salted fish. So she you buy this salted fish that's been hanging for 20 years, right? And she steams it, and then on the side will be, and then she'll like sprinkle onions, and then on the
Huh.
side, a traditional Puerto Rican dish, and then on the side will be stuff like avocado, green bananas, yellow bananas, breadfruit, those,
Wow.
a bunch of heavy starches. So they're good for you. You know, they're
Yeah.
they're, they're good for you. It's not like fried potatoes. Um, so that would be cool if I was going to the moon and I could put that in a Ziploc,
Oh yeah. Yeah.
just
That sounds
for that one
that
meal.
sounds amazing. Because one of the things that as you're going in, you're doing the extreme environments, as you know, uh, the psychological impacts associated with exploration, especially space exploration, and when you bring in food and the culture of food. And so, what is good for you to eat is not necessarily psychologically satisfying.
I
And
think I think I so the lesson learned when I was in Iraq years ago, because I joined the army in the mid '90s, and the MREs were horrendous, right? A slab of ham or whatever. And I remember that the DoD was doing a research on improving meals for soldiers because it improved morale.
yeah,
And I remember in Iraq we that was kind of the transition. We started seeing MREs we never heard of before, like uh, milkshakes. It was mixing ones, but they was pretty
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Hamburgers, ribs, and steaks. Years ago, it was just spaghetti or chili, basic stuff, right? But it did improve. They did improve morale, and you can see the space program did the same thing, right? Back in
mhm.
the '60s and '70s, it was just nasty crap they were eating, right? Uh,
Right.
and now they have, you know, freaking cappuccino machines up in the space station, and ice cream machines and all kind of stuff. They do. They have all that
Yeah,
stuff up there.
it is amazing to think about that and how long it's taken us to get there, especially from the military standpoint and the morale.
Nothing against the government, but the government is very slow in doing stuff. Right? It's always taxpayer driven, budgetary constraints by Congress. Now that the commercial space industry is exploding, right? In the last, I don't want to say since SpaceX, right? They're not the only ones, right? But in the last 10 years, space has changed. How do we get to space? And it's catapulting. I remember it was like what, 2 launches a year, right? Space shuttle. Now we're getting like,
Now,
I don't want to say boring, but now like, oh yeah, space. Oh yeah, they launched this morning. Big deal, right? Because it's becoming the norm. And
right.
that happened in the '70s, right? Okay, we went to the moon, and then after that, everybody's like, okay, whatever. Um, so it's a fine line. We got SpaceX, Blue Origin. I don't know. There's like 100 companies now in Florida, all fighting for launch windows. Um, but that's in 2030 when I don't know if you have kids, but the kids that are today gonna grow up in 10 years from now, it's gonna it's gonna be like ordering an Uber almost, right?
Right.
Uh, Maybe then they can go to space, but the I don't think the enthusiasm will be there as much as it is when we were there because it was just starting, right? Oh,
And thinking
Hubble.
about that though, the access to space, and the whole idea of because people always say space is for everyone, but when it comes to human space flight, it has been an exclusive, very
It's a
tight group
very
of people.
small exclusive group. I
Right.
applied like years ago. Nothing. I
Yeah.
applied this last turn. I haven't heard nothing yet because they just closed it out. But you know, it is, it's nothing against. What kind of takes me off a little bit is that anyone could go. You don't need a PhD to be an astronaut. You don't
Right.
need a master's degree. You don't
Right.
need a bachelor's degree, right? I'd rather take that Eagle Scout that knows how to build a fire to Mars, right? Not that we can build a fire on
Right.
Mars. You know the analogy, right? And I think that's where SpaceX is going, right? Where Elon Musk is
Mhm.
saying access to everyone. NASA is still hiring combat pilots, PhDs from Harvard. I don't know why they keep doing that. and it kind of discourages a lot of people because I don't have an Ivy League school. I don't have thousands of years of combat flight experience. I know they changed the requirements a little bit this time, so they're still hiring doctors and PhD engineers because I don't know why.
You
Yes,
know, I
you
feel very much similar to that, just because when I applied in 2009, I was very hesitant because I'm like, I'm not an Ivy League person and all of these kinds of things. I was really fortunate that I ended up being a finalist during that selection process. But now I feel like 10 years later, I am so much smarter, my act is so much better prepared, but to some extent, I've aged out. I'm 50 now. So back when I applied in 2009, I was 39, and the oldest female ever selected was technically Barbara Morgan. She was in her 40s, but she was a special case because she was the backup teacher to Christy McCullough. And so when they brought back the Teacher in Space program, she officially became the first teacher in space and was a selected outlier. But besides that, all the other females have been 39 and under. And
Yeah,
so
I looked at the age group from the last selection. I think they've gotten a little better. I think
for males, not
44.
females, females
Yeah,
skewed younger, males have skewed up. There have been males selected in their 40s
yeah,
later on, but females still,
yeah.
man.
You know what? And it brings up a good argument because Kelly went up, and he's our age, maybe a little older, and he did a long term in space.
Mhm.
I don't think, and even Senator Glenn, right? He went up in
Yep.
his 70s.
Yep.
And I read some of that post research. I don't think if you're in relatively good shape, NASA, I hope you're listening to this. If you're relatively decent, smart person, right? You know how to put two and two together. You're in relatively good shape, right? And you're a team player, right? And no history of felonies and drugs and or plans to blow up the space station. I think the opportunity should be open to further. I think the constraint is, and I think they learned that a few years ago, if they don't tighten the shot group, right, they're going to get 50,000
Right.
applications, right?
Right.
And that's going to take years to process. So this time, I don't know if you did it last time, but when I did it a few months ago, so I did the application, and then like a week later, I got a link to do a psych test. So I don't know if you did it.
Oh,
So I did the psych test, and then I got a email to do a introduction about the hardships of leaving your family behind or something like that. And
interesting.
so I wrote about going to war 3 times
Yeah.
and being away, but the lessons learned from that. So that's where it ended. That's where I haven't heard back from them yet. And then the last thing I got was 6 to 10 months. We should start seeing
Yep.
some.
It's usually a full year as you go through the process, but it's very different than when I did it in 2009. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. And good luck with that.
So they're
Uh,
wearing out people. I'm gonna be 48, but I'm looking at these astronauts in their late mid 40s, and they're still flying, and they're in the
right.
50s, and they're on their first launch, their first missions. Um, we'll see. Or now I'll save 250,000, and I'll go with Elon Musk. I'll get somebody else to.
I'm already on the Elon Musk, Blue Origin, Virgin, whatever, whoever will take me, I'm on their ticket. So going back to imagining yourself on Mars, and you can have this amazing meal that reminds you of Earth. Who would you want to have that meal with, and why? Who would you
With the
bring with you?
person,
Yeah, if you could
that
bring
would be my
anybody in the
dad.
world, your dad.
My dad got, he passed away a while back, but if I can, it doesn't have to be Mars. If I can sit today with someone, and my dad passed away like a week after I published my first book, so at least he was able to see that, and that was
Mhm.
pretty cool. And oh yeah, I'd sit back with my dad and have maybe a good old fashioned burger with a cold beer and just talk. He was a biology teacher, so he kind of knows a little bit about what I'm doing. Um, yeah.
Oh, I love that.
And then I'll go even further. We would have to be watching. He loved old westerns like Clint Eastwood. So if we can
yes,
sit back and watch Clint Eastwood, like old spaghetti westerns.
yep.
So if I can have a burger and a beer on Mars with him and watching on whatever we're watching, an old classic spaghetti western, that would be worth it. That would be totally it. Yeah.
I love that. This above me, this was my dad's certificate. I was born directly as a result of the Apollo missions. I was born on Guam. My dad was working for at the tracking station there, and he passed away when I was 19. So he was my whole inspiration and encouraged me to be the person that I am today. And what you said just resonates about just if we could bring them back and have that moment and just I love that. And so do you like to cook? Did your mom teach you how to cook?
I cook all the time. Yeah. So now a little different. So in the last few months I've lost like 8 pounds. I want like another 10 more. So in
hmm
case they do call me for a physical or something. So I've been I have great vision, so I don't have to worry about that. My cholesterol, I don't have any problems. Uh, so I just want to get back into my army shape. So I've been
oh
doing a lot
yeah.
of working out, and I cut
hmm
back on the carbs, a little bit of meat. And if they don't call me, then guess I'll go to Burger King.
well, I remember when I went through the selection process and they put you through a workout and all of those kinds of things. And yeah, they want to see that you're in shape or can at least get into good shape. But a lot of it is mentally, who are
Yeah,
you
you know
and
what?
what makes you tick?
I don't want to. I look at the astronauts now,
hmm
right, and they look relatively okay.
Yeah.
Okay, they don't look like triathletes,
Yeah.
right? Like they did in the '70s. It was just combat pilots and hard knockers, right? What do they call them? The hot dogs. And now I look at I look at the astronauts, and I'm like, okay, I'm about in your shape. I can tell, right? uh, so at least I got that going for me. Um, so we'll see what happens.
So talk to me about your books
Oh,
and
Mars. Yeah.
yeah,
So that kind of goes back to this whole thing. Unfortunately, many of us will never visit Mars, right? Um, and that's not because we'll never get selected or we're too old. It's just that the selection pool for the next few years will be very small,
yeah.
right? Not just for NASA, but going to Mars.
Mhm.
However, maybe Blue Origin or SpaceX or Lockheed, whoever the race to Mars is going on right now, right? Maybe we'll get lucky, right? But for the most of us, I don't mean you and I. For the rest of the world, I wanted to bring Mars to them, right?
I love
And the
it.
best way to do that is to bring a book where they can throw on some glasses. I intentionally wrote it so it can be read under 3 hours, and that they don't have any questions afterward. It's a simple book
Mhm.
to read. The back has a glossary with all the references. And I could have added more photos, right? But I wanted, I think it was 50 photos, make it very easy, and
Yeah.
it kind of follows a timeline. What is Mars, history of Mars, and then from regolith up to bigger things like volcanoes and stuff like that.
I
Um,
love it. So, and thank you because you gave me a signed copy when we
yes,
got to meet at Yuri's night. And so I love it.
yeah, I
And
missed Yuri's night this year. That's sad because this
I
COVID
know,
thing. So, but
I
maybe
know.
next year.
Yeah, definitely. And so I just want to finish up with two last questions. First off, what do you love to cook? What is
I love to
Antonio's go-to
cook.
dish?
I like to make paella.
Ah,
So,
yes.
I have my own little liberties. I kind of changed the dish.
Mhm.
I like my paella with a very limey taste to it. So I go a little overboard on lime and pepper. I don't like oysters. I don't think you can put
Mm. I don't
oysters in it.
either.
But I do love I love the clams and the shrimp and the lobster when it's cheap uh,
Oh,
and the mussels. That's my favorite dish, and it's gotta have like a really good, delicious homemade garlic bread next to it, so I can
Oh,
just throw
I,
it in there.
that sounds
Maybe
okay. That
some
sounds so good.
white
I
wine on the side. Yeah.
Oh, wow. And then the second thing I want to ask you is how can people follow you? I know that you already have a massive social media following, but if there happens to be somebody out there that doesn't know you, how can they follow you and your adventures?
So Twitter is the easiest way. Antonio Paris. I just blast stuff out, and I apologize if I don't respond because I just get too many questions. And Facebook is the same thing. Antonio J Paris. Facebook is more personal.
Mhm,
So that's like you and I, people that actually know, and people in my circle, or people who've read my book. Like 90% of the people on Facebook are St. Petersburg residents that
mhm,
just follow me, and a few from astronomy groups. There's, Twitter's like basically I don't just people I don't know. They're just like astronomy. Thank you for following. Um, so that's it. Just look it up, and I used to post a lot, like 20 times a day, and I learned that that's bad in social media, because I learned that the more you post, the shorter your I forgot the key term is the shorter the lifespan of that tweet is.
Oh, right, right.
So, but
Well,
if I post a really cool photo, and I've noticed that the lifespan of the tweet lasts even longer,
yeah.
right? I mean, it's got to be photos. If I
I
post hello, nobody cares, right? People read and respond to imagery.
I couldn't
That's
keep up with you. You posted so much. I'm like, dang, Antonio, do you do anything else?
well, I had an auto poster. I used to use YouTube. So the morning I go, I post like 10 things, and then it'll automatically post it every hour, right?
Oh,
So
got it.
I could have been taking a bath and it's posting. It's not me, right?
The secrets.
But I learned that's bad. That's good if you're CNN and you want to post
Mhm.
news updates. But for the stuff that I'm doing, I learned that, you know what? 2 posts or 3 posts max a day seems to be keep people engaged. Yeah.
Oh, I can't believe we're out of time because this has been awesome, Antonio. Those of you guys who have been listening, Heather left a comment, Christopher left a comment. I've got today's recipe postcard. I will
Cool.
choose one winner and I will mail this to you tomorrow. I'll let you know tomorrow and mail it out. Thank you for listening to Space Snacks. And Antonio, I can't wait to see you in person again sometime soon.
I'll be there in a few months. I'm gonna
Yes?
post that itinerary soon. So,
Okay.
all
I
right.
can't wait. Thank you for coming
Bye.
on.
Bye.
Bye.